Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So the previous video we did question 1 up to question number 4. So we are proceeding on from question number 5. So question number 5 is telling us to place in cell E4 a formula that does not use the concatenate function to extract the first character from E2 and concatenate it with the style of the item. So the key thing here, we are not going to concatenate using the concatenate function. So the alternative will now be to use the what? The ends. So the ampersand sign. So let's go to the cell. So this is the cell E4. So we are told we are taking one character, the first character from this cell. For example, we are taking the first character from silver. So we're taking S, concatenate it with the style so that it becomes SC1. So to do that, I'll put my equal sign. So I'll use the left string manipulation function to extract that first character. So I'll use the left. Then from this text, I want to extract only one character. So I'm closing my left function. So after my left function, I now use the end, the ampersand sign, to join that character that I've pulled out from this, join it with that. Press enter. So that's the expected outcome. So copy down across, copy across to the other cells. So we have the output like that. So the next part, we are asked to apply appropriate formatting. So the formatting we've already done, the formatting to the spreadsheet. So required formatting was to convert the weight to 3 decimal places. What else? The currency, anything in currency value, to dollars, 2 decimal places. So now we are asked to add a new spreadsheet called user interface to your workbook. In the user interface, enter the text shown and format it like that. So the formatting that is required here is to add a background color and bold this part, italize this text, as well as to do the merging on this text. And then rep text, sorry, it's yes, so there's merging of cells, this one and that one. So then there's also, so row number 1 and row number 2 merging, but row number 2 there's rep text as well. Then row number 3, this has to be reduced, it has to be less than the size of a normal cell. So row number C will only need to see the bottom part of 3. So those are the main changes. And also these values from row number 4 down to row number 9, they have to be right aligned. Take a note, row number 6 should be left blank. So in my case, I had already created that required spreadsheet called user interface, and I've put the required information inside. So let me just add a border to this, more like this. So now to proceed, we are asked in cell B4 and B5, we are asked to create a drop-down menus to select the chain code and the length. So we need to put the chain code here using a drop-down, as well as the length in centimeters. So these are the 2 cells they are referring to. So our chain codes, remember, we are getting them from the main spreadsheets, which are these values. So these are the chain codes. Then the length in centimeters, these are the values that we are referring to. So we need to use validation for that. So we're simply going to click on data, then data validation, then I'm going to validate a list, then my source for the chain codes. As I've highlighted earlier, these are the chain codes. Click OK. So my drop down is there. I can pick any chain code there. Then length in centimeters, do the same. So I'm clicking in that particular cell, go to data, data validation, validate a list, then the source for my length in centimeters. So this is the source for my length in centimeters. Then I'll click OK. So I can pick any length from there. So these are my, these the chain codes. These are the length using a drop-down list. So to move on now, we are asked to, in B7, to use a function to look up the type of metal selected using the chain code. So we need to choose the metal here, which could be silver, gold, or platinum, based on the chain code. So, which means we will need this part as our what data source, or rather as our table array. So the most appropriate formula to use here would have been the what the X lookup. But in my case, unfortunately, I'm using an older version of Office. I'm using Office 2016, so I won't be able to use the X lookup, so I'll be using the H lookup. So for me to use my H lookup, I have to tamper with my data a little bit because I'm using the code to find the metal. So in order to use my H lookup, I can actually use the metal to find the code, because what I'm supposed to find should be below the value, that the lookup value that I have. So I have to swap these values so that I can use the code. So the code should be on top of the metal. So let me just make a slight change to the data source, but I'm not doing it in this worksheet. So I'm just going to copy the data, create another worksheet, then I can paste the data almost the same, row number 2 in D. So row number 2, so let me just drag this spreadsheet. So row number 2, so I'll paste, let me copy again. So I'm copying this data, or data array, then I'll paste it in this particular cell. Alright, so what I've done is I've created a new spreadsheet and I've just switched the values. So I'll start with the code, then I'll have the metal at the end, so that I'll be able to use my code to find my metal. So for me to successfully use an H lookup, the lookup value should be at the top, isn't it? Then the column that I'm going to look for, the row that I'm going to look for should be below. So now what I'll now go on to do is I'll say equal to H lookup. So H lookup, then I will say chain code is my lookup value, comma, then table array. So I now use the new table. So I'll select my table array like that. Then let me just lock the range. So whenever you deal with ranges, it will be wiser to lock. So that will be my table array, comma, then row index, the metals now in row number 3, comma, then we use the false, the exact value, press enter. So if there is an S at the start, then it's supposed to be a silver. If it's a G, it's supposed to be gold. if it's P, it's supposed to be a platinum. So now, having done that, we proceed to the other tasks here. So this one requires us to use the index and match function to display the metal or the weight of the metal in grams for the selected chain code and length in centimeters. So we have got chain code, which are the columns. We have got the length, which are the rows. So what it means here is we would need a match function to make the chain code dynamic as well as to make the length dynamic. So it's a bit of a tricky question for this paper, but so what I'm doing here is, we are told, according to the question, we are using what the metal, display the metal, the weight of the metal in grams. So it is the weight of the metal in grams. So I will say equals to index. So index, then after index, it's asking me for the array. So what is my array? So it is the weight in grams. So the weight of the metal in grams. So that's my what? My array. So weight of the metal in grams. So select this range, which has got the weight of the metal in grams. And again, whenever there is an array, whenever there is a range, it's wiser to lock, to make the cells absolute. So this is my array, where I'm looking for the weight in grams. So comma, I need to look for the rows. And remember, we said the rows are the length, the centimeters. So I'm going to say match. So that's where I'm going to use the match function there. So match, then it's saying lookup value. So this is the centimeter value, comma, where do we find the centimeter value? The lookup array. So centimeter values within the grams. So these are the centimeter values. Then since it's a range, I will lock the range as well. Then comma, the next thing is to find the exact match. So I'm choosing 0 there. So I've done the match for the row. Now comma, I need to do the match for the column. We say the column are the chain codes. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to start another match function. So start the other match function. Then it's going to ask for the lookup value. So I'm using the chain code now, because that's the value for the columns. Then comma, where do we find these chain codes? So the chain codes are at the top. So starting from this point up to that point. So it's a range again. I have to lock my range, make it absolute. Then comma. Then we need an exact what? An exact match. So double click on 0. Then I close my match function. Then I close my index function. And I press enter. So that's the correct answer. So PC3, the intersection of PC3 and 45 centimeters should give us this value. Thank you so much for watching and listening. So I'll proceed from question number 12 in the next video.